So you know that job that I told you that I manifested about like 2-3 days ago, like last week's video, I think so. I lost it. They fired me, and I had been doing that job for like 2 months, and I was meant to be doing that for longer. And I told you like, yeah, I manifested finally the 4,000 euros a month that I wanted, this and this and that, managing like 2 TikTok accounts, which was super easy to do, and all of that. And this is the kind of thing that I feel like in the past it would have sit like really bad with me, but I realized why this happened. So what happened exactly? I was managing this like company's TikTok account and someone else's account in the company, and I was doing a pretty good job, yada yada. But it is true that they were asking me to do so much work that actually I was counting like how many hours I actually sat with that, and the stress that I had. I was like 4,000 was not even enough to cover everything that I had to do, but okay. So I was doing all that work for like that amount of money, and it came to a point where I was like feeling really stressed, but I was like, okay, but it's 4,000 euros, Ada, it's like what you wanted, it's what you wanted to manifest, blah blah blah. But there was like a little part of me unconscious that I just realized when I got fired that was like, I want to be making this amount of money, but not with this amount of stress and not with this amount of responsibility, because the reason I started with freelancing now is because I didn't want to have a boss. I want to have clients, which is not exactly like a boss employee relationship. It's more of like, I do these services for you and you just leave me be for the rest of the time, okay? So, but I started to see certain things where I feel like my client kind of like believed that he was my boss, or like he's used to being the boss of someone, and he was like, oh, why didn't you show up at like the weekly company meeting? And I was like, because I don't need to, because you never told me in the contract that I needed to come to company meetings. I told you I was gonna be there if I could, but like I'm traveling and you know that. So there were like little things that I feel like kept on adding up, where he was like, oh, I understand, even though we agreed on like me not being like an employee or anything in the company, but he just like wasn't happy with that and probably wanted someone to be in the company, even though he really liked me. But the thing that tipped everything, and the thing that I feel like is the reason why they fired me, and that's not something they're gonna admit obviously, is that I made a TikTok the last week, I think, the week before they fired me, where someone asked me like, hey Ada, how are you making this much money, or how did you find, no, they asked me how I found the clients that I was managing right now. And I explained the story of how like this guy just like reached out to me on LinkedIn, I started managing him, and then I started managing the company, blah blah blah. Never mentioned his name, never mentioned the company's name, never mentioned anything that could possibly relate me from this person to their company or to him, because like I manage a lot of different accounts. I've been on a lot of different like accounts videos, like only like sporadic videos, because I also do TikTok ads, UGC and all of that. So no one could ever link me to that company, to be honest. I never put anything on LinkedIn. Because I tried to keep that very like separate and private. I'm just like, I manage TikTok accounts, but you don't need to know my clients. If there's clients of mine who are like super happy with me saying like, hey, I work for this company, then I'm gonna obviously say it. But some clients are just like, you know what, your face is on our TikTok, so that's enough, but you don't need to be like spreading the word, you know? And since I do social media and I explain my life and I like to do story times about like what I'm doing, I like to kind of like have a separation there. So I explained that story of like how I was making 4,000 euros a month from that company. Apparently that didn't sit right with my boss. He called me like a few days later, because that TikTok went viral, and we never signed an NDA. We never signed anything that said like, you cannot say how much you're making, you cannot say anything. And I'm saying like expressly that I never mentioned anything on that TikTok. I was just saying like, I work for a person that has a company, never said this, like the field where the company was in, never said anything. So it's like, I never said even where he's from, nothing. So it's like, you cannot really get angry at this. But he saw the TikTok, obviously he felt identified, and he was like, okay, she's talking about me and my company. So he called me and he was like, hey Ada, I saw this TikTok, and like I felt, it made me feel, he said sad and like upset or like uncomfortable or something like that, which is like, why sad? Like, I mean, someone asked me about my story with like how I got this job, and I just explained the story and I was telling them how much money I was making. But to me, even though he said like he felt sad because he was like, yeah, because I don't want people to like know this, blah blah blah, it sounded like ego. It sounded like crazy ego. And I told him like, hey, but no one can really relate you from me to your account. So, and he's like, yeah, but you said that the person that you were managing was like a Forbes whatever. And I'm like, do dude, I've managed like 7 Forbes people, and like anyone can be on Forbes today if they pay money for that. So that doesn't make you any different or any special. And then he kind of stopped. You know, one of those moments where you think that everything's about you, but it's not. And I feel like when I said that, it just like made it worse for him, because he is not as enlightened as I thought he was. I know enlightened is not the best word, or woke, because those words, like, I don't really like those words, but you know what I mean. So I remember like during that conversation, I had this feeling of like, this person's done with me. I told him like, well, I'm sorry if that hurt you, or like that made you feel some like kind of way, because like I was really careful about this, but I've always talked about my clients on social media. All my clients have always been happy that I mention them, that I tell them, like I tell the world my successes. So like, I don't know what the problem is. And he was like, no, but I don't want you to think that I don't want you to succeed, because I do, yada yada, but like this was just like, I don't know. I feel like maybe he just felt used, or he felt like I was just like in that job for the money, which I mean, technically I am, obviously. Like he knows that I want to be doing my own social media. So like, you know that I'm doing the job for your company, even though I can enjoy it. I'm not doing it because it's the passion of mine to like work for your company, you know? Like, I like to have different clients to touch different fields, but like my purpose at the end of the day is my social media or my projects or whatever. So I don't know what it was, but something in that conversation just like made me feel like, okay, this person's done with me. He's gonna fire me really soon, because I just like, now I just get these like intuitions, feelings, whatever you want to call it, really quickly, and I'm usually not wrong about them. So like, yeah, like the next week he was like super unresponsive, and when usually like he would respond to my messages pretty quickly, he's like, no, I'm super busy this week. Which is like, sure, you have been busy for the past weeks and you were always super responsive, but okay. Not gonna say anything. And then a week later went by, and then on a Sunday he was like, hey, can I call you? And I just like immediate anxiety attack. My boyfriend was like, no, but why are you being so negative? He's not gonna fire you. And I was like, when my anxiety tells me something, it usually ends up being right. And I told him like, well, it's Sunday, I'm not gonna take up the phone right now. And I was also feeling half sick, so would you mind calling me on Monday? And then next day he called me and he was like, well, we've been looking at like budget cuts, this and this and that, and we need to make a budget cut here because we need to focus the money on like the website, whatever. And I remember on that whole conversation, I was very like unresponsive, being like, okay, sure, whatever, because I was just like, I don't fucking care. And even though that amount of money that he was giving me was kind of like a big amount and like a big part of my paycheck, even though I have other clients and things like that, I just didn't care. And I didn't care because of the following. The moment that he kind of like showed me that he was not in alignment with me, I realized like, you know what, I don't want to work with this person anymore, because like he's trying to take away my freedom. And one of the things that I've always been very clear with myself, and like through my whole like job life experience, I'm also 29 years old, by the way, because some people think I'm younger, but I've been on a lot of different jobs, I've had a lot of different bosses. But something that I've realized over the years, like the more I align with myself, the more I find the right opportunities for me. And when I found this opportunity, I was in one point of the alignment with myself of what I wanted. Like I wanted a remote job and this and this and that. And then I found this job. And then during this job, I was like, okay, I like this, but then it also adds this unnecessary stress to my life, because they ask for like a lot of quantity of TikToks, a lot of this, a lot of that. And I always, like every few weeks, I would have this little like moment of stress where he would be like, oh, you didn't show up to this meeting, or you didn't do this, when this was never my responsibility, because I never agreed to any of that. So it kind of like was a teaching lesson where I just realized, okay, you aligned to this, you got that job, but now that you're in this job, you continue aligning with yourself. And the process of continually aligning with yourself is that you're going to be losing a lot of things too. So I feel like this was kind of like a way for me to prove to myself that I was able to find a job that made me that much money. And the moment that my freedom felt compromised, because I remember like in the moment he called me, I kind of apologized. I was like, well, if you don't want me to talk about your company anymore, I won't. And he's like, yeah, I would feel better if you did that. But that instantly felt wrong with me. And I talked to one of my best friends who knows me better than anything in this world. And I told her that, and she was like, Ada, you and I are the kind of people, because she's really like me in this point, in this area, in this aspect. You and I don't really like being told what we have to do or don't have to do. And you are the first person who always thought that transparency is one of like your key values. Like you like being transparent, you like being honest and telling people the money you make, this and this and that, because it helps people. So he just went against one of your values, and I feel like you just don't feel like this like person aligns with your life anymore. So it's like, and this is something that she told me before I got fired. And then when she said that, I kind of went into this phase of like, she's absolutely right. I don't like this, and I don't believe in what he just said. And I remember like even in the conversation, he said something about like, well, Ada, this can also, because he's obviously older than me, he's had the company for a while. He said something about along the lines of like, well, let this be a teaching lesson for you that like if you ever like want to meet with investors or things like that, there's certain things that you shouldn't do. And I feel like even though this person was more, I thought he was more modern, he just showed me that moment that he was really conservative. He also believes like really hard on like hustle culture and all these things that I'm like, I started to see during the work together that I was like, this person doesn't align with me. Like I thought he did, or at the beginning he did, and at some point during the way he just like got lost, or I found out more things that I just didn't align with me. And the funny thing is like the moment he told me, like I just didn't react. I just was like, okay, sure, whatever, cool, have fun. Like he was like, well, do you want to work like for another week and get paid for that? I was like, sure, let's do that. So I'm doing that at the moment. And the funny thing is that TikTok, which is the reason why he fired me, because I am sure that is the real reason why he fired me, actually brought me 5 more clients. Well, and 7 potential more clients for the future, but like 5 more clients for now. Like people were like, oh my God, I've been looking for someone who managed my social media, and I feel like you're the right person because like I love your energy, this and this and that. And I actually met with one of those clients yesterday, and she wanted me to do exactly the same job that I was doing for my boss with like less amount of TikToks, more money, a more interesting experience, and she's more willing to actually grow. She's also a believer in law of attraction and all these things, and I met her in person yesterday, and she's like the sweetest soul. And I don't know, it's funny how like I messed up that job, if you want to call it that, where I just feel like I just aligned with myself, and then the universe was like, you know what, this person was not meant to be one of your clients, these people are, here you go. So like the same job, the day that I was fired, like an hour later I was meant to have like this call with another girl that I had talked to for like a social media collab, and I thought that she just wanted to do kind of like an influencer post on TikTok or something. And when I talked to her, she was like, oh no, I actually want someone who's like monthly there, like doing this, scripting my videos, doing that. And I was like, oh, this is kind of like what I did for my boss, but also like less work and less stress for me. And she is also someone who is also like very like more like me. She and I understand each other better and everything. So it's funny that I lost a job, and like in a matter of hours I just had kind of like that same job for other people who aligned with me more, who meant like less hours of work, less hours of stress, and people who understand that I like they're gonna be my clients, they're not gonna be like co-workers or bosses or this or this or that, you know. So to me it's funny with life, because I feel like obviously like maybe you're going through a similar thing where like you just got fired for something and you depend on the money, and I mean obviously I have some savings, so that makes me stay chill and be like, well, if I lose the job I'm just gonna take the time to find something else. But in the past it's always kind of been like that. Like every time I got fired from a job it was for something better. I always ended up finding something better, and I never really took it from like the capitalistic way of seeing of like, oh, I failed, I'm a failure, because that's what my mom does. Or my parents do, like, oh, you probably did something wrong, you probably did this. And even though maybe in some cases you did something wrong, like I'm not saying I was always perfect in all of my jobs, probably I did something wrong in some of them, but I realized like the thing that maybe I did wrong was just something that was always kind of like looking towards me, looking towards my values, and looking towards like, I want to be doing this, and this thing that I was doing does not align with what I want to be doing, you know what I mean? So at the end of the day I feel like everything is just a redirection. You probably already know this, and I know that it's probably hard for some people to kind of like get into that space when you get fired, because a lot of people sometimes feel sad, feel this, feel that. And someone even asked that on my TikTok the other day of like, oh, but I don't know how you can feel like so happy, don't you feel sad? I was like, I did feel sad in the past, but if I think about this objectively, or even about the situations in the past objectively, I just feel sad that I lost the money. I didn't really care about that job. That job was not like the job of my life. If it was the job of my life, I wouldn't have lost it. So at the end of the day, it's like, obviously, you can mourn the job, you have to feel the loss, the grief, and I've had that feeling with other jobs, but not after some time, because I was just like feeling like, okay, this was just like a job that like left for like something better to come in. So I don't really care. I mean, like, it's kind of like the same thing that happens with people, you know, like you might have like a really good relationship and everything, but if it's not the relationship of your life, when you lose it, it's kind of like you might feel like pain of like, oh, I spent so much time with this person and I love them, or like with a friendship. But you know, it's usually always for the better, and something that's meant for you, it's never gonna like leave you, if that makes sense. So yeah, that was my story for today. I don't know how long I talked for today. 15 minutes, that's not too bad. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, give it a thumbs up, comment anything, like if you want me to talk about any specific other topic, you know, I'm always open to suggestions and ideas, and I'll see you guys next week.